Welcome to Week in One. I'm Heidi Jokos. Week in One is the show that features some of the top news stories and interviews on eNCA that you may have missed over the past 7 days. Let's take a quick look at some of this week's top stories. Alcohol and carbon monoxide poisoning have been ruled out as the cause of death for the 21 teenagers that died at Enyobeni Tavern in the Eastern Cape. Families of the 7 people killed in a farm attack in the Free State are struggling to come to terms with the brutal slayings. Violent protests erupt in Tembisa as residents take to the streets. The country is trying to come to terms with the tragic death of 21 teenagers at Enyobeni Tavern in the Eastern Cape a few weeks ago. Their families and the country have been anxiously waiting answers from Police Minister Bheki Cele, who this week updated families on the progress of the investigation. Lindo Guhle compiled this report.
Investigations into the death of 21 teenagers at Enyobeni Tavern in the Eastern Cape are still inconclusive. Police Minister Bheki Cele, the province's Premier Lubabalo Oscar Mabuyane, and the Health Department updated families on the progress of their investigations. The levels of alcohol and carbon monoxide found in the bodies were ruled out as they were not high enough to cause death. Police say they've, however, started investigating an industrial chemical called methanol that's been found in all 21 bodies.
It's products for cleaning and for hydrogenation and so forth. So it's other products that are outside what you would have expected in a tavern.
That are not for human consumption.
It's not for human consumption. Those are not for human consumption products. It is also found in issues like your sanitizers and so forth, but it's not also in that space where you can say this is a product for consumption.
Authorities could not give timelines on when these investigations would finally produce answers. Police say while there's no one charged with murder, an inquest docket has been opened.
There is an inquest docket that is under investigation. Dr. Matuani did give a preliminary report on that. There is a collaboration between both the Police Forensic Science Laboratory as well as the Department of Health and Pathology Unit that is doing the investigation to determine the cause of death.
Some of the parents we've seen after the meeting were still too emotional to speak after they were updated.
I'm correct, man. I'm correct. I'm correct.
The ANC Youth League in the region has called for interventions to stop such incidents from happening again.
There must be a multi-stakeholder engagement between parents, between schools, between us as the Youth League, between local government and all spheres of government to ensure that when it comes to the holiday season and the examination period, when it comes to an end, safety measures are in place.
Today's briefing was meant to demonstrate the work that remains ongoing in finding out what killed the 21 teenagers at Enyobeni Tavern. For some parents, it was another reminder of their losses. They've told us that their healing process can only begin after answers are provided. Lindo Guhle, East London.
Families of the 7 people killed in a farm attack in the Free State are in shock over the brutal slayings. This week, they were overcome with emotion as they identified their loved ones' bodies at a government mortuary. Moloko Moloto has the story.
An emotional sight, one that exacerbates the pain of bereaved families. Seeing the bodies of their loved ones who were brutally killed brought them to tears.
Ditopong tse 7 ke eme mo ke bulelwa setopo se seng le se seng hore ke thole e ileng wa heso o ka utlwisisa hore na ke trauma e kae e teng ho rona hona jwale e sale le nna ana maemo qala o kopana le ona.
The 77-year-old farmer, whose wife and stepson were killed along with 5 workers, is calling for the death penalty to be reinstated for such crimes.
I was in my house for the first time before yesterday and I felt peace and I feel I can easily come back, but not alone. Now I've got nobody. So I don't know where to go. Yes.
A colleague of the deceased expressed her anguish.
Ntho eo e re dutse ha bohloko bona hoba ha no theoetse rona ha re bua tje e ka be e le rona ba thuntsweng e re kore go utlwile bohloko ho ka mohelo le ngwana habo re utlwang hore na ha re ba batle ka hara kestelo.
The killings shocked neighbors of accused number 1 Kamohelo Motankisi.
Nna ke tshuile nnete fela ke tshuile ne ke sa expecta gore a ka etsa ntho jalo so ne ke lakatse ka reng ho ja mmuso no ka go utlwela ngwana ona na re sa mtlhoka strateng senana cause o na dula le motho a go kanang bo di weekend ha no le bate re sa nana gore a ka ba a fihlela qetellong ya gore a etse bo dipolao tse kanana.
The accused are back in court on Wednesday morning when they are expected to apply for bail. Molo Kumoloto, Kestel, Free State.
The first day of learning at Job Ratebe Junior Secondary School in Soweto was disrupted as parents and student governing bodies shut down the school. They are demanding the removal of the principal. This has since led to a 14-day investigation by the Gauteng Education Department into the deplorable conditions that pupils face. eNCA senior reporter Avi Wemtila was there.
Filthy toilets, a library in shambles, rubbish all over, and learners with weapons. Just some of the grievances that parents have raised to a principal they say is never at school, which has now prompted this shutdown.
We have problem with my classes. There are some classes that are electricity, and the toilets mostly our servants. There's been a dump site in Bagwe School, which is like a mess. Abantwana sometimes bakamela lapho because our toilets are our servants. And then there's a problem with police and everything like school, and nothing has been done.
My fear was that one day one of the kids was gonna die at school because they don't even care about the well-being of our children. That's how bad the situation is here in Jobratet. So we think we have enough of the principal. She must go because she doesn't have the best interest at heart for our kids.
The school has collapsed. Even the teachers, the staff and everyone is complaining about the same principal. The only nice room in the school is the principal office. Among blinds and staff and furniture is only here. So what about the other staff? And then now we have the mandate from the parents that we no longer want the principal here. The way the whole year last year as a car,
After a heated meeting with the school governing body and some of the parents, the education department briefed the media saying these allegations will be investigated. A caretaker principal has been appointed while the 14-day investigation continues.
We listened to the allegations that were leveled up around the principal, and we've taken a view that says we need to investigate those areas so that we can then come up with a pronouncement as whether she is suspended or what. But for now, we're just taking those allegations, we're going to investigating them, and from there we'll be updating the community what is the decision of the department around that particular area.
Member of Parliament Ntombi Khumalo, who was also at the meeting, was infuriated.
It's unacceptable in an education environment with a background myself in academia that the school principal or the head of the institution is inaccessible most of the time, off on leave most of the time. I think what hurt me the most as well, which was not spoken about and is given 14 days, gender-based violence, for example. The girls here have to use the fields because there's boys with guns that stand in the bathrooms, demanding 2 rands for them to use the toilet, and they end up using the fields, and we end up having rape and gender-based violence.
While learning resumes at the school, there are fears many more pupils face similar deplorable conditions at schools countrywide. Avi Wemtila, Soweto, Johannesburg.
Stay tuned to Week in One. Coming up, we'll be showcasing some of the big interviews on eNCA this week. Welcome back to Week in One. Every week, our anchors speak to newsmakers about issues that affect you as the viewer. Let's take a look at a few of eNCA's hard-hitting interviews featured this week. Power to Truth is back after a short break with Professor J.J. Tapane posing the burning question: is the African dream of economic freedom deferred by the crisis of corruption? He spoke to Professor Patrick Lumumba from Kenya, who is a public law expert.
We're talking 50, 60, 70 billion rand at a time being wasted by municipalities in this country, right? And I can imagine that in other constituencies across the continent, the same sort of version of events are happening. Is this what's deferring Africa's dream of economic emancipation?
Without doubt. If you look at the figures, and I think that the figures are conservative, of monies that are taken out of this continent through the thieving hands of politicians and bureaucrats, it is in the trillions. In fact, there are those who say that more money gets out of Africa than gets in through the aid or support that we receive from institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank, which means we don't need that money.
Goodness.
And that undermines our countries. It is almost every other country. But there is a sense in which we don't deal with those who are plundering our continent decisively and firmly, so that theft and corruption has become an industry. It has become an industry, notwithstanding that we condemn it. In a nutshell, corruption undermines the political and economic well-being of this continent.
You got the likes of China, right, who are themselves fueling the corruption in the various, constituencies across the continent. Yet in their backyard, they will kill you if you are corrupt.
They know. Because we in the African continent have demonstrated that, particularly the political leadership, that we are so cheap that when we buy for you an apartment, a two-bedroom apartment in Dubai, and we pay for your children's school fees in UK or in the United Kingdom or in Singapore, then you can sell your country. They know that. But they know that corruption is dangerous. That is why in their home country, they'll punish you. Is it a hopeless situation in Africa? No, it appears hopeless, but it is not. I think we have reached the tipping point. Now, household incomes are becoming so fundamentally reduced that people in rural Africa are now beginning to ask important questions. They are beginning to ask, when they go to school, there are no desks for their children, but we pay tax. They are going to hostels and there is no medication, and they are asking what is happening. They are driving on roads that are dilapidated. They are going to their farms and they can't have fertilizer, and they are beginning to relate corruption to the quality of their daily lives. This is the food that will instill revolution in their hearts and minds. And when I talk revolution, let me not be misunderstood. Revolution means a mental change so that you are able to condemn that which is wrong. That, I believe, is beginning to happen, even in a country such as South Africa.
Often the desk follows up on stories that our reporters are covering on the ground. This week was no exception, following the shocking news of methanol being found in the bloodstream of the 21 teenagers who died at the Enyobeni Tavern in East London. Sally Burdett spoke to Lucky Ntamane from the National Liquor Traders Association.
I would imagine that within the liquor trade you are discussing these latest results, particularly as you told me just before we went to air, there have been incidents where methanol used in illegal alcohol has killed people in South Africa. Tell us about those.
So we have had instances during the restriction on trade of alcohol during lockdowns, where people tried to be masters of bringing alcohol from the back of their garages or back of their homes. And this resulted in a lot of deaths. We saw reported incidents in the Free State, as well as in the Eastern Cape and KZN. And these are largely rural areas where people are preying on people's inability to purchase alcohol at a legal environment where they have to pay a bit of a premium, especially for spirits, because the methanol is largely used, in the spirit side. where people use this product to pass off, brands that are known as legit, whereas we know that they're not legit. So these are just people that are unscrupulous and they do not even care about the health of our people. So this is a worrying trend because it doesn't seem like it is going to end here. But now the big question is, and how do we stop this? But also, Sally, whilst I have an opportunity, I would like to acknowledge, the openness and the frankness in which the Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, has engaged with the alcohol industry. I've had a chat with him just before I came on air, as well as the Premier of the Eastern Cape, Oscar Mabuyane. We are willing, to work with the alcohol industry to ensure that we clamp down on this and that we do not allow these type of incidents to occur in our environments, because it is very dangerous that, not these will have killed not just 13-year-olds, but even grown-ups, fully grown adults, given, the toxicity of methanol in someone's body. So this is something that we really are placing our focus on. And as alcohol industry, we're going to come together to ensure that, we are able to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
A few weeks ago, Week in One featured an exclusive interview with Kelly Khumalo, who was Senzo Meyiwa's girlfriend at the time of his murder. As the drama continues to unfold in court, this week we heard from someone else who was in the house. For the first time since that fateful evening, Zandi Khumalo, the sister of Kelly Khumalo, wants to put her side of the story on record. She spoke to eNCA's Slindelo Masikane in this exclusive interview.
Obviously, after the whole incident, there were neighbors that were called for questioning and then in particular, kwalandwa umam Sangweni, kona umama bekuthiwa ngazi isangoma kwa 2020. So lo mama loyo walandwa in the afternoon, go 5 kanje. And then she was interrogated and beaten the whole night by our police, bala eMzansi. And then let go the following morning. Because bebethi kumele avume into angayazi. And umam Sangweni wathi angizi ukuvuma into engayibonanga. Abanye abantu abathintekile uMaphiri was accused of a whole lot of things naye. But I want to take this opportunity to say sorry to those neighbors. Siyaxolisa sumuzi kaKhumalo. It was not our intention. We did not plan for anything. But it just happened.
How much of this confusion do you put on how the police have handled this case?
For me, Mabeti, the crime scene was tempered with. I don't know really what they mean, because first of all, India sekayingani. The minute kungena abantu abayi-5, it's a full house. But by the time Tina sibuye esibhedlela, ukuhambisa usenzo, masibuya, the house was packed. Some of the people we knew, some of the people we didn't know. Abanye bezi-introducer ngala, hayi mina ngu-brigadier sibani. I can't even remember half of them. Maybe mangibabona ngizobakhumbula kancane ukuthi okay, I remember seeing this face at that particular point, but the house was full. So mabati, the scene was tempered with bashuktini, because bekungena abantu bephuma abantu. To what extent are you saying a crime scene was tempered with? Mina mangiphuma from endlini ngiyofuna usizo kaMaphiri. Ngithe mangibuya kaMaphiri already uKelly nomthogo bebebambisana with some of the guys from next door. I just jumped in there and ngalekelela nami in any way that I could. I was the one sitting no sense mover, putting pressure on the wound, leading to the hospital. Even on our way to the hospital, I could feel banda from inyaweni going up because I was holding him here. Futhi bengiphakamisa ngishiskipa isifakile, so I could feel his stomach all the way. I was busy talking to him all the way, trying to keep him alive. But unfortunately.
Stay tuned to Week in One, keeping abreast of the stories that have been making headlines in the past 7 days. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Heidi Jokos. Now, protests in the wake of high living costs are on the rise. This week, Tembisa residents took their frustration to the streets in running battles with police. They blocked off roads leading into the township and have vowed to continue with their shutdown if Ekurhuleni Mayor Tanya Campbell doesn't address their demands regarding their electricity woes and high utility tariffs. eNCA's Pulele Tweety Jones was in the thick of it.
Angry community members of Tembisa have brought down the township to its knees. Residents here say the increase in tariffs was extremely high and affordable, making it difficult to live. Some community leaders say they are now waiting on the Ekurhuleni Mayor Tanya Campbell to address them and see how they can find solutions going forward.
Ourselves and the other stakeholders agree on the mission that we need our rates to go down. So that's the unified mission for everyone here. So in terms of the way forward, we need for her to come here and address us as a community and listen to our demands, because we've been relating to her since April the 13th, earlier this year. But she wasn't even aware that we came there. So it's either her subordinates didn't inform her, or she just doesn't take the community seriously. So the community is very frustrated, and the community doesn't want to continue paying these high rates. And they've taken out so many of the advantages we had with the previous dispensations, but we voted for them.
Frustrated residents say they have been submitting memorandums and trying to speak to their local councillors. However, nothing has been done to resolve their electricity issues in the area.
We are going to promise them one thing. If they do not do what they asked to do, we are going to continue shutting down. The shutdown will happen. It must happen. It will happen. And one thing is, if they do not respect what we want as the community of Tembisa, we do not want violence, but if they do not listen to what we want, there will be violence.
For now, most community members have vowed to continue the protest until the mayor comes down and resolves their demands. Pulele Tweety Jones in Tembisa.
Meanwhile, in KwaZulu-Natal, the families of the victims of the Soweto tavern shooting are still coming to terms with the massacre. Earlier this month, 16 people were gunned down when unknown gunmen randomly opened fire at patrons. 13 of the victims are from Mzimkhulu in KwaZulu-Natal. eNCA's Manqoba Mqunu attended the memorial service for the victims and has the story.
Sizwe ubuhlungu engingabazi ukuthi ngingabuchaza ngibuthini ngendlela esizwe ngakhona ubuhlungu.
It's a murder that shocked South Africa and left residents of Mzimkhulu in KwaZulu-Natal reeling. And while the shooting happened hundreds of kilometers in Soweto, 13 of the 16 victims are from here in Mzimkhulu.
Sizosihlukumezeke kakhulu. Into yenzekile nje ibebuhlungu kakhulu ngoba manje ukubulawa kwabantwana, umntwana osemncane lo mntwana lo. Usemncane kakhulu na 22 years kodwa manje uzobulawa umntwana engalwi namuntu.
Distraught families couldn't hold back their tears, among them the Mjoli family that lost 3 of their family members.
Besicela kakhulu ku government ukuthi azame ngakho konke okusemandleni ababulali batholakala babanjwe. Singajabula kakhulu enhlizweni zethu, mhlambe ngathi kwehla nokwethuka uma ngakuthi bangatholakala ababulali balabantwana.
A candlelight ceremony was held in the memory of the victims, with many calling for an end to the senseless killings. But while police investigations continue, these families say they won't find closure until those responsible for the killings are behind bars. Manqoba Mqunu, Mzimkhulu, KwaZulu-Natal.
As the world celebrated International Mandela Day this week, another struggle stalwart was laid to rest. Jessie Duarte passed away on Sunday after a long struggle with cancer and was buried the same day as part of her Islamic faith. Described by President Cyril Ramaphosa as a champion of the oppressed everywhere, we end this week's program as the country reflects on the life of Jessie Duarte.
Your totem is the bear for Jessie. You have departed this earth. For hours I've been stunned.
A tribute to fallen ANC Deputy Secretary General Jessie Duarte, describing her courage and strength.
Jessie was many things. She was such an exuberant ball of energy and human being who cared about others. So I thought, let me bring this poem, which was inspired by herself, because the question of her totem being a bear is actually in a message she sent to us at the end of June, just the end of last month. She says, "My totem is a bear."
The Social Development Minister says Duarte always advocated for a united South Africa.
One of the issues that she didn't like very much was this thing of always referring to colored people, and she really felt the pain of always being described that way. And she was saying to us, we are all South Africans. As soon as we can be able to get rid of that and look at ourselves from just being South Africans. But also she was very strong in terms of issues of women and women empowerment.
Johannesburg.
And that's a wrap for this week's edition of Week in One. From myself, Heidi Jokos, and the Week in One team, have a great weekend.